similar question about a Nazi image. How can it be beautiful? And how can we know what the Nazis did? Some of his favorite terms might clarify what is involved here. One placard, one collage, quotes the Swiss writer Robert Balzer, "When the weak take themselves for the strong." This isn't the same work, this is another example of this interest in Hirschhorn in the weak position, the position of the weak. This is not a Christian prophecy, as in the meek shall inherit the earth, nor is it a Nietzschean boast. Nevertheless, in this weak position, Hirschhorn finds an explosive force, a kind of resistance. It is from beneath, he reminds us, that subversion comes. If the weak is one aspect of the bet, another is the headless, a notion that Hirschhorn adapts from Georges Bataille, who investigated the headless in the mid-1930s. Often, Hirschhorn aims for a work that escapes control, is headless in that sense, even the control of one who has made it, where he finds a resistant character in this headlessness, which he describes as a position completely submerged but still unresigned, unreconciled, and uncynical. The headless, in turn, calls up a third incarnation, third version of the bet in Hirschhorn, which is the fan. The fan can seem headless, Hirschhorn writes, but at the same time he can resist because he's committed. It's a commitment that doesn't require justification. In various pieces, Hirschhorn has adopted not only the tokens of the fan, things like pennants, scarves, and the like, but also the devotion. He is a fan of Bataille and Deleuze and Spinoza, just as he is a fan of his favorite football club. This is one of his altars, and this is to the Austrian writer Ingeborg Bachmann, who was very important after World War II and died at a very, very early age. And he literally makes these altars on the street to people he admires, the way that everyday people make little altars for political figures or movie stars that have died suddenly. Princess Diana said. In effect, Hirschhorn seeks to redirect the passionate investment of the fan in a diversion of cultural value, as in these altars dedicated to displaced artists and writers. Why not Bachmann, Ingeborg Bachmann, or Otto Freundlich, a German artist killed by the Nazis, to whom Hirschhorn has dedicated another altar? One of these figures, Hirschhorn asks, rather than Michael Jackson or Princess Di. This is the altar he dedicated, the one version of the altar he dedicated to the German artist Otto Freundlich. This is a utopian gesture, but it holds a critical charge, one not unlike the Marxist insistence associated with the German philosopher Ernst Bloch, that the left must not surrender the force of popular passions to the right, even or especially when those passions are archaic or atavistic. If we live in a culture of kitsch and affect today, Hirschhorn implies, the tokens he uses in these altars, then we must use these means. For Hirschhorn, the bet is also a way of seeing and reading. One way not to look away is to look dumb, he says. That is, to be dumbstruck by the outrageous events of the world, such as the mass murder of innocent citizens during the Iraq War, gruesome images of which Hirschhorn presents in his Ur collages of 2008. These are obviously very tough images, and we never saw such images in the United States during the Iraq War. These he found on the internet. In this way, looking down is a form of witnessing that is both ethical and political force. Also implied here is a further aspect of the best, which I will call, after the American theorist Eric Santner, the creaturely. For Santner, the creaturely is provoked by exposure to a traumatic dimension of political power. At such moments, a creaturely cringe is like when you cringe, is called into being, excited by exposure to the peculiar creativity associated with the threshold of law and non-law. And that's a difficult concept. But essentially what he means is that when we enter into a time or a space when suddenly law seems to be suspended, we become ambiguous as humans. We're forced into an almost creaturely, almost animal position. The creaturely thus points to cracks in the symbolic order at large. These are terrible moments, but they're also creative moments in the sense that the social order is unclear. These are cracks in the space of meaning, which might become places of purchase where power can be resisted or at least reimagined. From those placards that I showed you a few minutes ago to these collages, Hirschhorn often looks for such creaturely openings. Finally, the bet is also the simple, which Hirschhorn values. Simplicity is a foundation. And most of his installations include very simple images and very simple statements. This aspect of the bet returns us not only to the commonality evoked by Brecht, Beuys, and Wharhol, but also to the resources to be found in the general intellect of everyday people. Antonio Gramsci, the Italian Marxist to whom Hirschhorn will dedicate his fourth and final monument next year in New York City, defined common sense as the folklore of philosophy. That is, as a reserve not only of superstition, but also of truth. Sartre wrote similarly about the commonplace, and I quoted this sentence last night. The commonplace, this word, has several meanings. It refers, doubtless, to the most hackneyed of thoughts. But these thoughts have become the meeting place of the community. Everyone finds himself in them and finds the others too. The commonplace is everyone's, and it belongs to me. It belongs in me, and it is the presence of everyone in me. It is in the interest of this commonism, as Warhol once called pop art, not out of cynicism, but Warhol turned to Campbell's soup cans and Coca-Cola bottles. The Queen of England drinks the same Coke, Warhol liked to say, as the bum on the street. It's a fabulous line. It is in this interest, too, that Hirschhorn turns to everyday materials like cardboard and common techniques like collage. It is part of his search for a non-exclusive public, a public after the apparent disillusion of the public sphere. We're over halfway done. The third concept I want to underscore in Hirschhorn is expenditure. And here you see Hirschhorn with the big cover of the book La Part Maudite, The Accursed Share by Bataille. Bataille was very interested in excess. And it was his idea that, well, I will get to this in a second, but it was his idea that the problem in many economies is not scarcity but surplus. What to do with surplus. Energy yes, quality no, Hirschhorn proclaims. It is a motto that speaks to his desire to recharge forms of public art. And his altars, kiosks, monuments, and festivals do stage a passionate kind of public pedagogy. For Bataille, the essential problem of economic life is, as I just said, not scarcity so much as surplus. Energy, he writes in La Part Maudite, this is a book from 1949, which is a key text for Hirschhorn. Energy must necessarily be lost without profit. It must be spent, willingly or not, gloriously or catastrophically. It is the accursed share that must be expended. I mean, why else, I suppose, would the indigenous people of Colombia throw gold into the lagoon? Hirschhorn agrees. I think more is always more, and less is always less. Now, this is obviously a counter to the modernist aesthetic of less is more, which is associated with the great architect Mies van der Rohe. More is more as an arithmetical fact and as a political fact. More is a majority. Power is power. Violence is violence. I want to express that idea in my work as well. The Bataille notion of expenditure, of dépense in French, has guided Hirschhorn in several ways. In the first instance, there's the obvious excess of his displays, which perform a headless representation, mimesis, of the deranged excesses of advanced capitalism, of the overproduction and overconsumption all around us. This strategy of mimetic excess or mimetic exacerbation runs back to Andy Wharhol and other pop artists, to Daddas like Hugo Ball and others. With Hirschhorn, it is especially paradoxical. At the simplest level, even as his materials make you think of poverty, they are also deployed in the most extravagant ways. In this manner, Hirschhorn questions the capitalist order that sacrifices use value at the altar of exchange value. At the same time, Hirschhorn insists it is about absolute value. My work is about absolute value. This suggests that he advances not only a critique of capitalist exchange, but also a proposal of a different exchange altogether, along the lines of a general economy of non-productive expenditure advocated by Bataille. This motive is very important in my work. Hirschhorn says of the Bataille account of potlatch in the Part Maudite. You know what potlatch is? It's the practice that became famous in anthropology. It's the practice associated with Pacific Northwest Coast Indians, whereby the powerful tribe, the chief above all, would literally throw copper, the most valuable objects, into the sea. And he would give the most valuable items in the society, like blankets, away, give them away to other people in the tens and hundreds. And this would force the other people to give back. So a potlatch is a kind of gift exchange, which is not like a commodity exchange. And it's a kind of exchange that operates through excess.